The case of Athena Strand. Athena Strand was born on May 25, 2015, in the small town of Duncan, Oklahoma, USA. Her parents separated, and her father moved to Texas, while Athena continued to live with her mother in Oklahoma. Even though they lived far apart, her father maintained contact and visited her whenever possible. Occasionally, her mother would take Athena to see her father so that they could spend time together. Later, both of her parents remarried, and Athena became the older sister to two younger girls. Athena was a bright and sociable child who loved to play and spend much of her time outdoors. In the winter of 2022, when Athena was 7 years old, she temporarily left Oklahoma to stay with her father in Texas until the New Year holidays concluded. During that period, Athena attended a nearby elementary school. Her father's home was situated in a secluded rural area surrounded by forests and wide-open fields. There, Athena enjoyed spending time exploring nature with her father and also developed a good relationship with his new wife, Elizabeth. On November 30th, Athena came home from school at about 4:15 p.m., as she did every other day. That day, she was home alone with her stepmother, Elizabeth, since her father and grandfather had gone hunting. That evening, Athena had a disagreement with Elizabeth, after which she became upset and went to her room. Meanwhile, Elizabeth went to the kitchen to prepare dinner. About 20 minutes later, Elizabeth went to Athena's room to call her for dinner, but found that she was gone. She searched the entire house but couldn't locate Athena anywhere. Elizabeth then phoned one of her husband's relatives who lived nearby. Although Athena frequently visited those relatives, this time they said they had not seen her. Elizabeth next contacted her husband and informed him of the situation. He immediately instructed her to call the police and return home right away. When she returned, Elizabeth dialed 911 at approximately 6:40 p.m. Before I continue, I want to remind you that only a small percentage of people who watch my videos are actually subscribed. So if you enjoy my content, consider subscribing. It's free, and you can always change your mind later. Now let's move on with the video. Only 14 minutes later, officers arrived at the house. She explained everything to the police, saying she believed Athena had possibly left after their argument. At first, the officers were suspicious of Elizabeth because she had waited about 40 minutes before reporting the disappearance. However, after hearing her account of searching the house and contacting relatives, they decided she might be telling the truth. The police promptly began searching the nearby surroundings. Even though it was already dark, they quickly organized a search party to cover several kilometers around the property. They suspected the child might have wandered off in the darkness and was in need of immediate help. The search effort concentrated on the whole area, including the woods and fields. Authorities also considered the possibility of abduction, but found no evidence to substantiate that theory. There were no signs of forced entry into the home and no unusual sounds or screams heard that evening. The police received assistance from family members and local residents in their mission to locate the missing Athena. The girl's mother arrived at the scene quickly after learning of her daughter's disappearance. However, the results remained inconclusive because no trace of Athena was discovered. The search grew more challenging because the area around the house was rather difficult to access, particularly at night. Consequently, the police resumed the search at 7 a.m. the following morning with additional officers joining the effort. As news of the disappearance spread, hundreds of volunteers offered to help with the search. Some arrived on horses and ATVs, while police deployed drones and helicopters equipped with thermal cameras to look for Athena. By the close of the day, Athena still had not been located. Officers were worried for her welfare because of the cold weather at the start of winter. Although Texas is a southern state, the temperature had fallen to 50 degrees Fahrenheit. Because the girl was wearing light clothing, enduring such conditions would be very difficult. On the third day the search went on, and police widened the area being searched for Athena. Authorities grew increasingly suspicious that Athena might have left the house on her own. Over those days they combed miles in every direction, but were unable to find her. The police identified people who had been near Athena's house that night. Athena's home was in an isolated spot, far from the main road, and there were no surveillance cameras in the vicinity. Still, investigators soon uncovered an important lead. A courier had made a delivery to Athena's house that evening. Police contacted the courier company and learned that the delivery for that address had been assigned to an outside contractor. They then reached out to that contractor and confirmed the truck had visited Athena's house. Each of those trucks carried surveillance cameras. The police therefore requested footage from November 30th. After reviewing the tape for the time the truck arrived at the residence, officers observed the driver dragging a girl who resembled Athena into the vehicle. The police quickly identified the driver as Tanner Uhrer, 31, and proceeded to his address. Shortly afterward, the man was arrested on suspicion of kidnapping and taken in for questioning. When officers confronted him with the video evidence, Tanner began to talk. He said he had been delivering a package to Athena's house that evening. While reversing the truck, he heard a crash and went to see what had happened. There he found the girl on the ground and realized he had accidentally struck her with his vehicle. As he approached, Tanner noticed the girl did not appear to be seriously hurt. She was conscious and spoke to him in a calm manner. The girl gave her name as Athena. He began to feel frightened. He decided to place her in the truck and attempt to figure out how to handle the situation. The girl kept speaking to him and said she would tell her father about what had happened, which made Tanner increasingly anxious. He did not know how to deal with the situation because he believed that if she told an adult about the incident, he could face legal consequences. According to Tanner, he could not conceive of a better solution than killing her. He considered breaking her neck, but could not bring himself to do it. He then strangled Athena to death with his hands. He concealed Athena's body in a nearby river. Tanner provided police with the exact location where he had left Athena. So the police went to the location and discovered Athena's body. The murder shocked not only her family, but also thousands of people throughout the country. Every major media outlet covered the case, and many were horrified by the brutality of the crime. After the body was recovered, Tanner was charged with kidnapping and murder. While awaiting the medical examiner's report, the police closely examined Tanner's background to better understand his motives. Tanner's version of the events seemed implausible. According to his statement, he had lightly struck the girl with his vehicle, causing no serious injuries. However, Tanner claimed that he became so distressed that he immediately decided to kill her, believing that hitting a child would cause him to lose his job. Tanner's explanation appeared highly suspicious. Investigators learned that he was engaged and had a 1-year-old child. Besides his courier work, he occasionally worked as an Uber driver. In his daily life, Tanner also performed with a band at several cafes in the nearby city of Fort Worth. On social media, he frequently posted pictures with his son, snapshots from his musical performances, and other moments from his everyday life. These images did not depict him as a cruel or violent individual. There was no record of any prior criminal history before his arrest. Police also found no signs suggesting that he posed a danger to others. Meanwhile, Athena's parents filed a lawsuit against FedEx and the contracting company, accusing them of allowing Tanner to be employed. They demanded stricter employee screening procedures to prevent similar crimes in the future. Investigators revealed that the package Tanner delivered that evening contained a Christmas gift Athena's parents had ordered for her, a Barbie doll she had long desired. However, once the results of the medical examination were released, the case grew more complex. Experts concluded that Athena had died within an hour of being abducted. Her body showed various injuries, and the official cause of death was determined to be asphyxiation. Police then outlined a possible sequence of events that might have led to the crime. After arguing with her mother, Athena had gone outside to stand in the yard. At that moment, Tanner arrived to deliver the package and found her alone. According to the new theory, he saw an opportunity to satisfy his sexual urges. Since the area around Athena's home was quite secluded, police believed that Tanner may have deceived or deliberately attacked Athena to get her into the truck without meeting resistance. What happened next remains uncertain, but two main possibilities appeared most likely. The first possibility is that Tanner intended to take Athena away from the property to carry out his vile intentions, but the girl may have screamed or tried to run away. Fearing exposure, Tanner killed her and disposed of her body in the river. The second possibility is that Tanner committed some form of harassment toward Athena that did not involve direct physical contact. In that case, medical experts would not be able to find evidence of sexual assault. To uncover more information, the police spent several weeks investigating Tanner's past. They interviewed his family, friends, and acquaintances, searching for any indication that he had previously engaged in criminal behavior. During this process, investigators made a major breakthrough in the case. The police found several people who said they had been assaulted by Tanner when they were children. However, The identities of these people have not been released to protect the investigation. One of Tanner's victims went public with her story of being assaulted by him when she was 16. She shared her story on social media in an attempt to gain attention. Surprisingly, Tanner faced no consequences for his actions and was not even considered a suspect for a long time. Sadly, the victim wrote that no one believed her during those years. However, after Tanner murdered Athena, these accusations gained greater attention, revealing Tanner's true character. Now Tanner is also set to face separate trials for 4 sexual assaults involving minors. In preparation for the proceedings, the government announced its intention to pursue the death penalty. Tanner, meanwhile, has retained a lawyer who advised him to retract his confession and claim innocence, though this is unlikely to help him evade punishment, since the police possess video evidence from the delivery truck along with Tanner's own statement identifying the exact location of the body. All that remains is to watch the trial progress and wait for additional details to become public. Moving on to the next case. The case of Danilo Cavalcante. On July 3, 1989, a child was born in the municipality of Estu, in the state of Maranhão, Brazil. The boy was given the common Portuguese name, Danilo. This child endured a difficult upbringing. He was not spoon-fed nor comforted with bedtime stories. No one held his hand to take him to school when he reached school age. Instead, like many children in his impoverished neighborhood, he grew up on the streets. The environment for adults and children in Brazil's favelas is characterized by oppressive poverty, low living standards, and high unemployment. All these factors contribute to a thriving culture of street crime. Growing up under such conditions, amid filth, deprivation, and lack of basic human necessities, one's instincts for self-preservation take over. People survive the best way they can, or choose to. Unfortunately, most often, someone who has known only violence from childhood may follow the same violent path, having no other frame of reference. Our story today explores horrific brutality and relentless obsession capable of destroying lives. Such events unfolded recently. In 2019, Sarah Brando eagerly awaited the arrival of her younger sister, Deborah, and her 2 children, Ian and Yasmin, at the airport. After a failed relationship with her children's father, Deborah, who was 30 at the time, driven by a sincere desire to provide a better life for her children, moved from Brazil to Pennsylvania to live with her sister. The family quickly adapted to their new environment, enjoying a cozy home and improved living conditions. Deborah Brando and her sister, Sarah, were inseparable. They worked together at a cleaning service and often stayed connected through phone calls throughout the day. Their lives were quiet and content as they embraced their newfound circumstances in a foreign country. However, an unexpected acquaintance would change their destinies forever. In 2020, while spending a day off with her children at a park, Deborah met Danilo Cavalcante, a compatriot who was 31 years old at the time. A trusting relationship quickly developed between them. Danilo was attentive and kind to both Deborah and her children. Deborah fell in love with her Brazilian neighbor, Danilo Cavalcante, believing she had found a dependable partner. After several months of dating, they rented a small house together and began living as a unified family unit. Over time, however, Danilo, whose temperament was often hot and emotional, began to lose interest in the apparent perfection of their family life. As he grew closer to Deborah, his jealousy and obsession intensified. Mistrust, initially unfounded, gradually transformed into a need for total control over the relationship. Frequent conflicts erupted between the couple, often escalating into violence. Danilo would drink heavily each night and return home as a completely different person, almost like a raging animal. He demanded absolute submission and obedience from Deborah, punishing her severely in front of their children whenever she resisted. Despite her strength and persistent efforts to defend herself and protect her children, the situation became unbearable for Deborah. Unable to endure such treatment any longer, she moved back to her sister's home. After enduring numerous threats from Danilo, Deborah sought protection through the police and subsequently obtained a court-issued protective order prohibiting him from approaching her. Despite her efforts to distance herself, Danilo pursued her relentlessly, often issuing violent threats whenever she even considered ending the relationship permanently. Fearing for her safety, Deborah decided to investigate Danilo's past. She reached out to contacts in Brazil through social media and uncovered startling information about his previous life and the reasons he had come to the United States. To her shock, she realized that Danilo was not who he had claimed to be. On November 5, 2017, in Brazil, Danilo had fatally shot a 20-year-old student named Walter Jr. Moreira dos Reis 5 times near a restaurant in Figueroa over a trivial matter involving a car repair debt. Investigations revealed that the two men had been friends prior to the incident. Following the crime, Brazilian authorities issued an arrest warrant after the prosecutor's office requested preventive detention. However, Danilo managed to leave Brazil through Brasilia International Airport due to procedural disputes within the judicial system that delayed registering the warrant in the national database. This revelation left Deborah stunned, realizing the grave danger she faced merely by being associated with Danilo Cavalcante. It was not until 7 months after the crime that Cavalcante entered Puerto Rico illegally. In June 2018, an arrest warrant was officially issued in Brazil. Upon entering Puerto Rico, Cavalcante obtained a fake ID and eventually settled in Chester County, Pennsylvania, where his sister lived. Upon discovering Danilo's true identity, Deborah issued him an ultimatum: leave her alone or she would reveal his past. Tragically, this decision proved fatal. On the evening of April 18, 2021, Deborah was walking outside her house with her children, who were playing nearby, while she chatted quietly with an elderly neighbor. Danilo Cavalcante approached and pulled Deborah aside for a conversation, with the neighbor observing but not intervening. The discussion initially seemed calm. However, at one point, Cavalcante produced 2 knives and attacked her. Deborah fell to the ground as he stabbed her multiple times. Despite her children pleading for him to stop, he continued in a frenzy, inflicting a total of 38 stab wounds. A neighbor witnessing the attack attempted to provide emergency aid and stop the bleeding while Deborah's daughter ran to call for help. Deborah Brando was rushed to the hospital but succumbed to her injuries. Meanwhile, Danilo Cavalcante fled Pennsylvania to evade capture, remaining on the run for several hours until apprehended by the Virginia State Police. He was extradited back to Pennsylvania and placed under arrest pending trial. On August 16, 2023, Danilo Cavalcante's trial for first-degree murder commenced in Chester County. Investigators revealed that Cavalcante had refused to accept the end of the relationship and had been intimidating Deborah through repeated acts of domestic violence since 2020. During the trial, Deborah's sobbing child testified, recounting in detail the terrifying events of that day. It took the jury only 15 minutes to convict Danilo Cavalcante of the crime. He was sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. Following the verdict, Cavalcante was transferred to Chester County Jail in Pocopson, where he awaited transfer to a federal prison. On August 31, 2023, around 9 a.m., an inmate managed to escape from Chester County Jail. Utilizing a chimney, he scaled the wall between 2 narrow hallways and ascended through the chimney to the roof. Avoiding the barbed wire fences, he broke free. Surveillance footage captured him moving through the tight space between 2 walls in the exercise yard. Using his arms and legs, he climbed upward, eventually running across the roof. From there, he climbed over a fence and pushed through the barbed wire to gain freedom. Prison officials were aware of vulnerabilities that had been identified after a previous escape by an inmate named Igor Bolter and believed they had addressed them adequately. Officials thought that adding barbed wire after Bolter's similar escape attempt months earlier would prevent any further jailbreaks. Acting Warden Howard Holland stated that, according to court documents in May, inmate Igor Balta had climbed onto the roof of the jail and jumped to a less secure location, but was captured less than a mile from the prison within about 5 minutes. In response to this urgent situation, the prison was closed, initiating a massive search for Danilo Cavalcante, who was considered highly dangerous. Alerts were issued throughout the area. Danilo Cavalcante, age 33, with black hair, was possibly armed and extremely dangerous. The escape of such a dangerous felon received widespread media attention. The search for the fugitive was broadcast daily across all media channels. The Pennsylvania State Police Chief overseeing the operation held regular press conferences and briefings, providing residents with precise updates about the special operation. He urged residents not to remain passive, but to actively help through vigilance and observation to determine Cavalcante's route. This proved effective. Just a few hours after the escape, Danilo Cavalcante was spotted walking along a road about 2 miles from the prison. With the assistance of reports from local residents, Cavalcante was captured on camera in the early morning hours of September 2nd. Police established a search perimeter around the area, securing roads and railways to prevent potential escape, and offered a $10,000 reward for any information leading to his capture. Authorities began searching within a 2-mile radius of the jail, focusing on the heavily wooded areas of Pocopson Township in Chester County. A local resident spotted the fugitive in a creek bed just days after the escape, but he fled into the woods before police could apprehend him. The search continued, and the perimeter expanded after Cavalcante remained at large for about a week. A security camera later captured him at Longwood Gardens, a popular botanical garden nearly 3 miles from the jail, just south of where law enforcement had initially concentrated their search. There's a lot of ravines, tall fields, high grass, a lot of cover for a guy who is 5 feet tall and 120 pounds, stated Robert Clark, Deputy U.S. Marshal for the Eastern District of Pennsylvania, on September 5th. In addition to the challenging terrain, search teams had to contend with extreme heat and humidity lasting several days. After a week of desperate searches for Cavalcante, the number of officers involved increased from 250 to nearly 400. The search effort was strengthened not only in manpower, but also in equipment. Helicopters flying overhead broadcast a recorded message from Cavalcante's Portuguese-speaking mother, pleading with him to surrender peacefully. The following morning, Cavalcante was spotted by a security camera on property located about 2 miles south of the prison. Police moved quickly to establish a new perimeter around this property, Longwood Gardens, and nearby schools. These areas were temporarily closed while search operations continued. Over the next several days, police conducted intensive sweeps until Longwood Gardens briefly reopened with limited access, only to be evacuated and closed again after another sighting of Cavalcante. On September 7th, law enforcement doubled the reward for information leading to his capture, increasing it from $10,000 to $20,000. After nearly a week of searching, tension in the region was palpable, as locals were aware that a convicted murderer remained at large. Authorities, however, had not disclosed how Cavalcante had escaped from prison. In Chester County and Philadelphia, residents were advised to lock all doors and windows, secure vehicles, and stay indoors. CBS News reported that 34-year-old Danilo Cavalcante had escaped from a Pennsylvania prison. The intense search continued until a major development occurred on September 9th. Cavalcante managed to breach the search perimeter at Longwood Gardens and was captured on video standing on the porch of a former colleague's home near Phoenixville, almost 20 miles northeast of the initial search area. Cavalcante had cleverly altered his appearance, shaving his head and wearing new clothes to avoid detection as he moved across the state. He stole a van from a local dairy store and drove it to Phoenixville, hoping to find assistance and shelter from acquaintances. On the morning of September 10th, authorities discovered the abandoned van with an empty gas tank in a field in suburban East Nantmeal. The search area subsequently shifted to the northern part of Chester County. Cavalcante's movements forced authorities to adjust the search perimeter on September 11th. As the investigation continued, he was added to Interpol's most wanted list, and the reward for information on his whereabouts was further increased. That night, emergency services received a call from a local resident reporting a man matching Cavalcante's description breaking into his garage. The homeowner, acting in self-defense, fired multiple shots, hitting Cavalcante 7 times. Astonishingly, he managed to escape and stole a .2 caliber rifle equipped with a scope and flashlight attachments. Police arrived promptly and found Cavalcante's sweatshirt and shoes nearby. Once they confirmed his identity and recognized that this dangerous felon was now armed, local authorities urged residents in South Coventry to lock all doors and windows, secure vehicles, and stay indoors whenever possible. This fugitive remains particularly dangerous, and his escape has deeply concerned area residents. Several school districts even canceled classes as precautionary measures to ensure safety. On the day after Cavalcante was seen on surveillance video, police expanded the search and urged residents to keep their doors locked. A new search perimeter set up in South Coventry Township, which was tighter than before, because authorities believed Cavalcante was now surrounded. The search continued throughout September 12th. Around 1 a.m. on September 13th, an aircraft with thermal imaging technology spotted Cavalcante in the woods. However, due to bad weather, The police had to wait until sunrise to approach, as the surveillance plane could not operate safely. The significant breakthrough occurred in the early morning hours of September 13th, when authorities found out that a security alarm went off just after midnight within the final search perimeter. According to Biven, an officer of illicit drug enforcement, the aircraft using thermal imaging technology detected a heat signal around 1 a.m. shortly after the alarm was triggered. Ron Johnson, a retired Missouri State Highway Patrol captain, mentioned that technology played a major role in this operation. He said law enforcement faced many challenges for a long time, but managed to pick up the heat signal from a DEA spy plane just in time. At approximately 8 a.m. on September 13th, police located Danilo Cavalcante asleep, still in possession of the rifle he had stolen from a home 2 nights earlier. The dangerous fugitive attempted to flee by crawling into dense undergrowth, but a police dog named Yoda intervened, biting Cavalcante's head and restraining him until officers arrived. Lieutenant Colonel George Bivens stated at a press conference that Yoda's actions caused Cavalcante minor head injuries during the apprehension. Immediately following his capture, Cavalcante was questioned by authorities. He revealed that he had survived on watermelons and creek water, traveled only at night, and admitted that he had nearly been caught while hiding at one point. He also confessed that his plan had been to steal a vehicle and travel to Canada. Since returning to custody, Cavalcante has been charged with multiple offenses related to his escape, including burglary, trespassing, and theft. Following his capture, local and state officials, including Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro, publicly thanked the law enforcement officers involved in the manhunt for the high-risk fugitive. Chief George Bivens, who led the search, described the numerous challenges faced during the operation, highlighting the intense heat, thunderstorms, and heavily wooded terrain that complicated the search efforts. The operation involved roughly 500 officers from the Pennsylvania State Police, FBI, ATF, and U.S. Marshals, who conducted exhaustive sweeps of the area surrounding the escape scene. In the aftermath, the Chester County Jail Board faced significant criticism from residents for failing to prevent the escape. Locals noted that prior security improvements had been recommended after Igor Balti's attempted breakout on May 19th, enhancements which might have prevented Cavalcante's escape, as he used the same method. Following the incident, the jail terminated the guard on duty during Cavalcante's September 7th escape, citing that the officer had opportunities to detect the fugitive during the breakout. In response to public concern, Chester County Jail announced the installation of a tin roof over the area where Cavalcante had scaled 2 walls to escape, alongside other security upgrades. Governor Shapiro emphasized that the incident raised serious questions about prison security, stressing the importance of communication and cooperation among law enforcement agencies and local residents during the manhunt. Thanks to the combined efforts of these teams, Danilo Cavalcante will now remain in custody and will not be able to escape again. Moving on to the next case. The case of Eva Blanco. Eva Blanco was born on February 17, 1981, in Spain. Her father is Manuel Blanco, and her mother is Olga Puch. In 1997, Eva's family relocated to Algete, a small town near Madrid. They selected this location to enjoy a calm and peaceful life away from the noise and rush of the capital. Among the 3 sisters, Eva, Rebecca, and Maria, Eva is recognized as the quietest one when she is with her close friends and relatives. However, Eva always shines as a joyful, dependable, and delightful companion. She is also highly enthusiastic about sports, and this passion brings her immense happiness and satisfaction. At school, she is admired by many for her grace and her warm, approachable personality. Eva serves as a role model for her younger sisters and is known to be a responsible girl. She always obeyed all the rules established by her parents, including the curfew, so they never had to worry or be distressed. However, on a fateful day, things did not unfold as planned. On the afternoon of April 19th, Eva and her friends played tennis, enjoying carefree moments of youth. They did not realize that this seemingly ordinary afternoon would soon turn into one filled with darkness and sorrow. On Saturday evening, as the sun went down, they decided to go to a nearby disco to celebrate their strong friendship and spend time together late into the night. Eva asked her mother for permission to return home later than usual. Seeing her daughter's responsible nature, her mother agreed to let Eva stay out until midnight before coming home. It was late at night, and the clock read 11:30. One by one, the group bid farewell and headed home, including Eva. She had no idea that her journey home would lead to perilous mysteries. Eva and her friend chose to take a shortcut through a vacant lot to reach home faster. It was a path she had walked many times before, but destiny had other intentions for her. At 11:45 p.m., they parted ways, and Eva began walking through the familiar dark, open area. As midnight drew near, Eva's mother grew anxious because her daughter had not yet returned home. She contacted Eva's friends to ask for information, but they told her they had already separated and that Eva should have been home by then. This made her even more uneasy. She decided to inform her husband, a tow truck driver, who promptly started searching for Eva in the town. They were joined by their nephew, a local police officer, and the father of one of Eva's friends. At 1 a.m., Eva's parents officially reported their daughter missing to the local civil police station. However, they felt disheartened by the lack of concern shown by the police, who took more than an hour to file the missing person report. The officers minimized the gravity of the situation, suggesting that teenagers like Eva were often involved with drugs and might be lying somewhere in a doorway or on the street. This clearly indicated that they were not taking the search seriously. Throughout the night, Eva's father went to the local civil police station 15 times. He was deeply frustrated and condemned the agency for failing to promptly organize a search for Eva. He accused the civil police of neglecting their responsibilities. However, the police rejected these accusations and explained that, in accordance with standard procedure, they typically waited several hours before initiating a search for a missing person. Meanwhile, Eva's father remained anxious, holding on to hope that his daughter would return safely. Yet, the actual reason for this delay remains uncertain, adding further confusion and despair. The search for Eva commenced at 2:30 a.m., with friends and authorities scouring the town and nearby areas. However, the police did not officially file the missing person report until 8 a.m. By noon, Eva's family had contacted the local television channel Telemadrid, requesting them to broadcast news about the incident. At 9 a.m., Eva's body was found by two elderly individuals 6 kilometers from the town of Algete, near a road construction site that connected Cobina and Belvis del Jarama. This location was commonly used by young couples for private meetings in their cars. At first, the discoverers suspected that a serious traffic accident had occurred, assuming she had been run over. However, when the police arrived, they uncovered a far more horrifying reality. Eva had been savagely murdered, lying face down on the ground with numerous stab wounds. She was dressed in jeans, a dark sweater, and hiking boots, the same clothes she wore on the day she disappeared. One sleeve of her jacket was torn off, indicating a violent struggle. Investigators believed that both Eva and her killer had reached the area by car. However, heavy rainfall during the night had erased tire tracks and other essential forensic evidence. Despite the obstacles, investigators located Eva's faint footprints and discovered an important clue: the footprints of a man wearing size 42 moccasins. These findings gave a glimmer of hope for justice for the innocent victim. The Eva family was informed by the police about the discovery of her body. According to the autopsy report, Eva had been stabbed 19 times in the back and had died from excessive blood loss around 4 a.m. The murder weapon was a Navaja knife, 8 to 10 centimeters long and 1 centimeter wide. Eva's death was a devastating tragedy for the entire community. The attack began while she was still inside the car and continued as she tried to escape up the roadside. The injuries, especially those to her ear and the back of her head, revealed the brutality of the assault. The very first wound inflicted was severe enough to be fatal. Forensic evidence confirmed that the victim had also been sexually assaulted. DNA samples from the same perpetrator were found on her body and clothing, confirming the heinous nature of the crime. A red cloth was discovered in the victim's mouth and was identified as material from an ordinary car seat cover. This detail suggested that Eva had been taken into a car after being kidnapped. It reflected the agonizing final moments of the innocent victim. However, since her body was found fully dressed and without visible signs of extreme violence, investigators and police initially assumed that it might have been a consensual sexual encounter that ended in a deadly altercation. Eva's parents firmly believed that their daughter had been abducted, raped, and murdered to conceal the evidence. They rejected the notion that Eva had taken her own life. The police remained confident that the case would be resolved quickly. They suspected that someone acquainted with Eva had offered her a ride and taken her to a secluded location, a well-known meeting spot for couples, where the tragedy took place. Initially, police focused their suspicions on Eva's ex-boyfriend from Fuente El Saz, but he was released after questioning. The investigation then shifted toward men who were known to Eva's family, specifically, those she might have trusted enough to accept a ride from. Nevertheless, as the case grew more complicated, police could not rule out the possibility that the perpetrator was a total stranger. However, Eva's friends were certain that she would never willingly enter a car with someone she did not know and believed that she must have been forced inside. Adding to the mystery, several neighbors reported seeing an unfamiliar blue car driving through the town around midnight, following another girl. The driver was described as a blond man in his 20s. Unfortunately, no one recorded the vehicle's license plate, leaving an essential lead in the case untraceable. During the investigation, detectives found unidentified male bodily fluids on Eva's body and clothing. However, this crucial information was kept confidential and never revealed to Eva's family or the public. At the same time, police quietly began collecting DNA samples from men who were related to or acquainted with Eva to compare them to the DNA retrieved from the fluids. The DNA of Eva's father, Manuel, was secretly obtained from a cigarette he had smoked while drinking coffee and discussing the case with officers. Other samples were covertly collected during alcohol tests or from glasses that potential suspects had used at bars. Although no DNA matches were discovered, the Civil Defense Police continued to believe that the offender was an adult male residing in Algete or nearby areas. The investigation persisted while Eva's family longed to uncover the truth. 8 months after Eva's tragic death, her mother found 2 hidden diaries in her daughter's room. The diaries were dated from 1995 to 1996 and from 1996 to 1997, in which Eva recorded her everyday life up until the day of her murder. Most of the entries centered on Eva and her ex-boyfriend Miguel. Their names appeared repeatedly, written in various ink colors across the pages. Near the end of the second diary, Miguel's name was suddenly replaced with the number 343 to 110, while Eva's name remained unchanged. Despite numerous efforts to decode the meaning behind this number, no one has ever found a convincing explanation. The true significance of the number remains unknown, leaving Eva's family and investigators haunted by this mysterious clue. After Manuel's DNA was conclusively excluded as belonging to the suspect, he began a campaign urging Algete residents to voluntarily provide DNA samples to assist with the case. With the mayor's backing, an official announcement was issued in November 1999, requesting all men over the age of 16, approximately 5,000 individuals, to provide hair or saliva samples. However, Spanish judicial authorities rejected the initiative, labeling it naive, improper, and ineffective. They also warned that it could stigmatize those who chose not to provide DNA, which was within their legal rights without a court mandate. Moreover, they believed the true perpetrator would never willingly submit a DNA sample. Eva's father gathered 2,013 DNA samples from residents of Algete and nearby towns and submitted them to the local court for evaluation. The judge sought an opinion from the Madrid chief prosecutor regarding the legality of such testing. On March 30, 2000, the chief prosecutor emphasized that only individuals suspected within the investigation should undergo testing, not all volunteers. As a result, only 45 samples were analyzed, including 12 from Eva's relatives, acquaintances, and individuals with criminal records, particularly those linked to sexual offenses or knife-related violence. Time went by, and the case eventually grew cold. However, a major turning point came when a woman reported to the authorities that she had seen a suspicious man near the construction site around 8 a.m. before Eva's body was discovered. The man appeared disheveled, walking in the rain without an umbrella, looking exhausted as if he had been awake all night, and seemed to be searching for something before entering a white Renault 18. Police considered her testimony credible since several other witnesses had also reported seeing a Renault 18 years earlier, consistent with fibers found on Eva's clothing. On October 28, 2013, authorities released a composite sketch of the suspect created with the help of a new witness. The man was described as of 1997 as being approximately 35 to 40 years old, between 170 and 180 centimeters tall, weighing around 75 to 80 kilograms, overweight, with short brown hair, a square-shaped face, harsh features, and deep-set eyes. He was reportedly wearing a white shirt, a V-neck sweater, and driving a white Renault 18 with red upholstery. A confidential phone line and email address were established to gather tips, which received 100 messages by January 1, 2014. In late 2013, the investigation made a significant breakthrough when DNA from the bodily fluids indicated that the suspect was of North African descent. Police requested 300 North African men who had resided in Algiers in 1997 to voluntarily provide DNA samples. A former neighbor of Eva's, then living in southern France, produced a close genetic match to the perpetrator, suggesting the DNA could belong to the neighbor's brother. Subsequent DNA testing identified the suspect as a man named Ahmed Chel. On October 1, 2015, Ahmed was arrested outside his workplace in Villefranche-sur-Saône, France, during a joint operation between the Spanish civil police and the French gendarmerie. Ahmed Chel was born on March 1, 1963, in Taza, Morocco. In 1989, he married a 20-year-old Spanish woman in Madrid and later became a Spanish citizen during the 1990s. They had one child, and when Eva was murdered, Ahmed's wife was 5 months pregnant. They were not registered residents of Algiers because they lived inside a truck owned by Ahmed's employer, where he worked as a delivery driver, approximately 4 kilometers from the crime scene. In 1999, the Chel family moved to France, where they separated amicably but remained legally married in Spain. In 2003, Ahmed remarried a young Moroccan woman who lived near the Swiss border and had children with her. He worked as a welder in agricultural machinery, but struggled to maintain positive relationships with co-workers. When confronted with the DNA evidence, Ahmed claimed that 2 unknown men had taken him to Eva's body and forced him to touch her. However, his ex-wife disputed this, telling reporters that Ahmed had actually gone out with his brothers, as they often did on weekends. She revealed that one of his brothers had mentioned being at the same nightclub as Eva and speaking with her after she argued with her ex-boyfriend. Eva returned to the club at 11 p.m. with friends rather than with Ahmed's brothers. Ahmed's ex-wife added that neither he nor his brothers had been questioned by police. She denied that Ahmed was abusive, but admitted that he became aggressive when intoxicated. Female colleagues and clients described Ahmed as unfriendly, volatile when drunk, and inappropriate toward women. Eva's family had minimal contact with Ahmed's brother and had never met Ahmed himself. On October 5, 2015, Ahmed attempted suicide but survived, after which he agreed to be extradited to Spain to stand trial. At a hearing on October 13, he remained silent but agreed to provide a DNA sample. He was kept in custody until the DNA analysis confirmed his involvement. In January 2016, the prison's psychiatric unit lifted Ahmed's anti-suicide precautions. Ahmed asserted that he had been forced to touch Eva, denied any form of penetration, yet failed to explain why his bodily fluids were found in her genital area. On January 29, 2016, Ahmed was discovered dead in his cell, having taken his own life by hanging himself with his shoelaces. The trial was officially closed on February 15, 2016. Although Eva's family finally identified their daughter's killer, they felt disheartened that he was never brought to justice for his cruel acts. Nonetheless, they hold faith that true justice will be served in the afterlife. Eva's story stands as a testament to the pursuit of justice after tragedy, as her community came together to seek answers for the young girl whose life was stolen. Moving on to the next case. Patricia and Tucker. A group of children playing near Amherst Street in Granby, Massachusetts, discovered a woman's body on November 15, 1978. Buried beneath a pile of leaves, investigators determined that she had been fatally shot in the temple. There was also evidence suggesting that the woman's body had been dragged using a man's belt. It was estimated that her life had been taken approximately 3 months before her remains were found. Unfortunately, investigators were unable to identify the woman, and for decades she became known only as Granby Girl. She was laid to rest in a local cemetery with a headstone marked unknown. On March 6, 2023, the Northwest District Attorney's Office held a news conference at the Granby Police Station to announce a major development in the case. It was revealed that the remains discovered in 1978 belonged to 28-year-old Patricia and Tucker. First Assistant District Attorney Stephen Gagney stated that advancements in DNA technology had enabled them to locate Patricia's half-sister in Maryland, who then directed them to her son. He had been just 5 years old when Patricia disappeared. Gagne remarked that while it was gratifying to finally learn the identity of Granby Girl, the investigation would not conclude until the person responsible for her death was identified and her family was given further closure and justice. He emphasized that the investigation, which has spanned decades, would persist until every possible lead had been thoroughly examined. Gagne further explained that Patricia had been married to Gerald Coleman, and the couple had lived along the shore of Lake Pecotapog in East Hampton, Connecticut, in 1978. Coleman, however, never reported his wife missing. He died in a Massachusetts prison in 1996. According to Gagne, Coleman is now considered a person of interest in Patricia's case. Before her disappearance, Patricia had used several married names, including Patricia Heckman, Patricia Dale, and later Patricia Coleman. Authorities have urged anyone with information about the case to contact the Granby Police Department at 413-467-9222 or email dwight@granby.pd.org. Patricia's son, Matthew Dale, who is now 50 years old, also spoke publicly and recalled his final memory of his mother. She was sitting in the front seat of a stranger's car, wearing a vest. It was 1978, and Matthew was seated in the back. A man he did not recognize was behind the wheel, but Matthew clearly remembers the final words his mother spoke to him before she vanished. "She told me to go across the street to the playground," Matthew said, referring to a group home for juveniles. "She said goodbye." Now, in middle age, Matthew's recollections are blurred. To the best of his memory, the facility was located somewhere outside Boston. His father picked him up the following day and raised him after his mother's disappearance. Matthew has spent most of his life in North Carolina, haunted by the mystery surrounding what happened to his mother. Over the years, rumors circulated among relatives, including speculation that Patricia might have entered the Federal Witness Protection Program. Matthew said that it wasn't until he was in his 30s that he accepted his mother was gone. "My mother fell in with the wrong crowd. She wasn't a hiker, like some of the stories said over the years. I've been told so many lies about it." His father passed away in 2015, and though Matthew feels somewhat lost, he remains happily married. He is a father himself and has worked as a union electrician for most of his life. A few weeks before the official identification, police appeared at his home. They asked him several questions and explained that they had located him through his uncle's entry in a DNA database. They said Granby Girl. "I thought, what is Granby Girl?" Matthew recalled. State police investigators did not reveal many specifics, but informed him that Patricia's body had been exhumed. Matthew had previously submitted his DNA to a database in hopes that one day his mother might be identified. He sent the investigators a copy of his digital DNA profile, and within hours they contacted him by phone to say that it was a confirmed genetic match. He still keeps mementos of his mother, a baby photo album she made for him, a lock of his hair, and a small tapestry she painted when he was little. Matthew said he now plans to arrange a proper gravesite for his mother. For decades, her resting place was marked only by a wooden cross. In 1998, residents of Granby donated funds to provide a more respectful marker. "It was an awful end," Matthew said. "What I want to do is have a new gravestone made for her. She deserves to have her name on it." Moving on to the next case. Sabrina Lee Hathaway. On the evening of December 21, 2014, 23-year-old Sabrina Lee Hathaway left her aunt's house in Worcester, Massachusetts, telling her she was going for a ride with a friend and would be right back. However, Sabrina never returned home. Tracing the young woman's last movements, police discovered that on the night of her disappearance, Sabrina had gone out with her ex-boyfriend, Kevin Crozier. The couple had previously lived together in Crozier's grandmother's house at 11 Dixfield Road, but Sabrina had moved out on December 13th. According to Crozier, the pair went to a friend's house that night and got drunk. A friend drove them back to the Dixfield residence, where they went inside. Crozier then passed out, and when he awoke, Sabrina was gone. He later told the media, "When I woke up in the morning, she was gone. This has happened before. She took off. I went to church. When I came home, I called her, Facebook messaged her, called her aunts and mom, called her friends. No one had seen her, but this has happened before." Sabrina's life had not been an easy one. Her father died young, and her mother, Brenda, was involved with drugs and prostitution. Over the course of her life, Brenda had been in the state correctional system 13 times, for periods ranging from a single day to a year. She was brought in on charges including shoplifting, larceny, drugs, prostitution, and giving a false name. During her childhood, Brenda had been exposed to domestic abuse and became involved with violent men as an adult. Sabrina ended up continuing this cycle of abuse. While Sabrina's siblings were adopted, she was raised by relatives. In one particular home, she was sexually abused at the age of 7. At 14, she became pregnant by a classmate and gave birth at 15. She became a mother again at 19. Her children are still being cared for by relatives. According to Brenda, the pair often argued, but it was uncharacteristic for Sabrina to leave without warning and not stay in touch with family. Relatives added that she never missed her children's birthdays or other special events. At the time of Sabrina's disappearance, Brenda stated that she was attempting to use tough love with her daughter. On January 1, 2015, the Dixfield Road residence was set on fire and burned down. Firefighters on the scene reported that no bodies were found inside the home. A few months later, in March, Crozier and 2 other men, Scott T. Fallon and Lionel Bermudez, were charged with arson in connection with the fire. Authorities believe the trio decided to burn the property for insurance, which was valued at $134,000. However, it was not actually insured. Fallon and Bermudez already had criminal records for drug offenses, and Crozier, by all accounts, had a troubled past. He had previously spent time in jail for robbing and beating an elderly man. According to Sabrina's friends and family, Crozier was abusive toward her. Brenda recalled that over the summer, her daughter had 2 black eyes. Sabrina's relatives attempted to end the relationship, but each time, Crozier would coax her back, and the abuse would resume. Crozier continues to maintain his innocence. In March 2017, Fallon and Bermudez pled guilty to arson and conspiracy. Crozier was also convicted, and all 3 were sent to prison, although they have since been released. In April 2021, Crozier was shot during a street fight, and at the time, it was unknown whether he would survive. It remains unclear what became of him afterward, as no obituaries or reports of his death were found during research. Sabrina's family believes Crozier knows what happened to the mother of 2, noting that he never contacted them following her disappearance. Crozier's family, however, does not believe he was involved in Sabrina's case. At the time of her disappearance, Sabrina was receiving Social Security disability benefits, but the funds have remained untouched since she went missing. Calls to her mobile phone go straight to voicemail, and loved ones have noted that she grew up in Worcester and does not know anyone outside the city. When speaking to the media, her mother has frequently expressed fear that her daughter is dead. In May 2017, local newspapers reported that Brenda, 43, was found unresponsive outside her apartment. What began as a loud argument between her and her live-in boyfriend, Joseph Carnatic, 51, spilled onto the streets and became physical. Neighbors reported that Carnatic struck Brenda, knocking her to the ground. He then hit her 3 more times before stomping on her. Another neighbor stated that he was seen holding a hammer at one point. Brenda was pronounced dead upon arrival at the hospital. Her boyfriend was charged with aggravated assault and battery and sentenced to 7 to 10 years in prison. Sabrina's case remains unsolved. She was 23 years old when last seen on December 21, 2014, in Worcester, Massachusetts. She is described as a white woman with brown hair and brown eyes, standing between 5 feet 2 and 5 feet 4 inches tall, and weighing approximately 110 to 130 pounds at the time. She suffers from bipolar disorder and is classified as disabled. Sabrina has a tattoo of the name Jeliza, with angel wings on her chest. She may also go by the nicknames Bina and Biner. Anyone with information regarding Sabrina's disappearance can contact the Worcester Police Department at 508-799-8651. Moving on to the next case. Sarah Widmer. Sarah and Ryan Widmer first met at a popular coffee shop. Ryan was ordering a cup of coffee while Sarah stood in line and noticed a book on his table that she had just finished reading. Their shared passion for literature sparked their very first conversation. Gradually, they began spending hours discussing mutual interests such as books, movies, music, and their daily routines. Through these conversations, they discovered a shared love for nature, travel, and animals. After every meeting, their bond deepened, growing closer and more trusting. Their mutual understanding and confidence in each other continued to grow until their relationship blossomed into love. After several months of dating, Ryan proposed to Sarah during a romantic sunset at the same coffee shop where they had met. Overwhelmed with joy, Sarah happily accepted his proposal. The young couple soon began planning their wedding and found a beautiful two-story house in Hamilton. Finally, on April 10, 2008, their wedding day arrived. They chose a small church for the ceremony, attended by close friends and beloved family members. Every detail, even the smallest one, had been specially planned by Sarah. On that special day, Sarah looked radiant and stunning, and Ryan couldn't take his eyes off her. After the wedding and celebration, the couple went on their honeymoon to the Hawaiian Islands, where they spent 2 weeks exploring the breathtaking paradise and enjoying each other's company. At this stage, they were deeply in love and already dreaming about their future together, including having children. On the evening of Monday, August 11, 2008, after finishing her work at the dental clinic, Sarah met Ryan at a cafe. They enjoyed dinner and a cheerful conversation before walking home together. Once home, Sarah unpacked her groceries and sat down on the couch. Ryan brought her a glass of water and a headache pill. After that, she went to take a bath, and afterward, they finished watching their favorite TV show together. Sarah then went upstairs to the bedroom. She undressed, neatly folded her clothes, prepared a towel, lit a scented candle, and turned on her favorite music. Ryan picked up the TV remote, pausing occasionally on the football game. He lay on the couch for about 10 minutes before calling out to his wife. When Sarah didn't respond, he slowly went upstairs. In the bedroom, Ryan turned on the TV and called her name again. There was no answer. Alarmed, he rushed into the bathroom, where he found Sarah lying face down in the bathtub. Ryan immediately unplugged the drain, took out his phone, and called 911 at 10:49 p.m. Following the dispatcher's instructions, he managed to pull Sarah out of the tub and performed CPR. Within 6 minutes, an ambulance and police officers arrived at Ryan's home. An initial inspection of the scene drew the police's attention. The bathroom was dry and clean, showing no signs of splashed water or scattered objects. Sarah's body lay naked on the bedroom floor, her skin completely dry, with only her wet hair indicating that she had drowned. A paramedic continued performing CPR when no pulse was detected. A pinkish-white fluid began to flow from Sarah's nose and mouth. 2 attempts to intubate her while she was on the bedroom floor failed. Sarah was then transported to the emergency room, where doctors made 2 further attempts to restart her heart with a defibrillator, both unsuccessful. During the entire time, Ryan stayed beside his wife. Within 20 minutes of her arrival at the hospital, efforts to revive Sarah ceased, and at 11:41 p.m., the emergency room doctor officially pronounced her dead. Ryan fell to his knees in the hospital hallway and wept. Relatives and friends of the couple could never have imagined that only 4 months after their wedding, a tragedy would occur that would shock the entire city and make Ryan the prime suspect in Sarah's death. When questioned by police at the hospital, Ryan's initial statements immediately raised suspicion. Ryan claimed that he and his wife had been at home that night. They had eaten dinner out, returned home, and watched television. Then, since his wife complained of a headache, Ryan gave her painkillers and led her to the bathroom. However, some details in Ryan's account did not match the emergency call records. The victim was found lying face down, while Ryan had said his wife was face up. This inconsistency made police doubt his statement. Ryan appeared deeply shocked by the incident and kept calling Sarah's name repeatedly. Under police pressure, Ryan was compelled to cooperate with the investigation to uncover information about Sarah's death. He agreed to let them search his house. Analysis of the medication Sarah had taken revealed that it was a common painkiller typically used to treat headaches and migraines. However, she had also been undergoing a course of medication that affected her hormones, which might have caused her to fall into a deep, uncontrollable sleep. After searching the house, investigators found traces of blood on the carpet. During the investigation, the police identified several factors that made them question Ryan's story. When they arrived at the scene, the bathtub and tiles were completely dry, showing no signs of water. There were no wet clothes, towels, or any other items in the house that could have been used to absorb the water. The autopsy revealed that Sarah had several injuries on her body, including bruises on her head, neck, armpits, and lips. However, there were no signs of a struggle or resistance. Sarah's fingernails were intact and neither broken nor chipped, which contradicted the theory that she had been murdered during a fight. The autopsy performed by Dr. Russell Appointment Grove determined that Sarah's cause of death was drowning. During the procedure, experts also identified multiple muscle hemorrhages in the front of her neck and bruises on her head, all of which occurred before her death. However, the cause of these injuries remained unclear. Toxicology tests ruled out the presence of alcohol or illegal drugs in Sarah's bloodstream, making the question of what truly caused her death even more difficult to answer. On August 13, 2008, Ryan was arrested on suspicion of murdering his wife. The charge was based on inconsistencies between the emergency call, the condition of the scene, and the injuries on Sarah's body, which together were considered sufficient evidence to accuse him of killing her. Friends and neighbors confirmed that Ryan and Sarah were deeply in love. They never argued or fought in public and always seemed to plan their lives harmoniously. So what truly caused Sarah's death? In March 2009, the first trial began, with emergency dispatcher Ron Cronenberger taking the stand. He described his phone conversation with Ryan as calm and composed. However, Cronenberger also stated that Ryan seemed to merely be blowing into the phone, pretending to perform CPR. The prosecution argued that evidence from the 911 call, the condition of the scene, and Sarah's injuries collectively proved that Ryan had drowned his wife by forcing her underwater in the bathtub. The central piece of evidence in the case was the bathtub. Police examined it for fingerprints and discovered what they believed to be human handprints. These were located near the middle portion of the bathtub. Using a reflective ultraviolet photographic process, investigators detected fingerprints and stains on its surface. One fingerprint was found on the forearm area, and hair follicle analysis revealed that it belonged to an adult male, though the exact age of the print could not be determined. The police then called a medical expert to testify, who stated that falling asleep and dying in a bathtub was highly unlikely unless illegal drugs or alcohol were involved. According to the expert, the feeling of water on a person's face would normally cause them to wake up or trigger an automatic reflex to protect their airway. Additionally, a drop in oxygen levels in the muscles would likely awaken the person before death occurred. The pathologist who performed the autopsy was also called to testify. He stated that if Sarah's body was dry while her hair remained wet, the most likely explanation was that her head had been pushed off the edge of the bathtub, toilet, or sink. It was possible she had been pushed either forward or backward into running water or a filled bathtub. According to the prosecution's theory, Ryan held Sarah's head underwater until she drowned, and therefore, he should be convicted. Ryan's defense attorney, however, maintained that he was innocent and had no motive to kill Sarah. The attorney argued that if a violent struggle had truly occurred, as claimed by the prosecution, there would have been clear evidence of it. However, Ryan showed no injuries, and Sarah's fingernails were neither broken nor chipped. The defense further contended that Sarah's injuries were consistent with prolonged CPR, direct cardiac massage, and multiple attempts at intubation, performed that night at home, in the ambulance, and again at the hospital. At the request of the defense, a second autopsy was conducted. Dr. Werner Spitz carried out the procedure and confirmed once more that the cause of death was drowning. He noted injuries on Sarah's neck, arms, upper lip, skull, and liver, as well as internal bleeding in her neck, but could not determine whether these injuries resulted from CPR efforts. Those present argued that paramedics had attempted to revive Sarah for roughly 45 minutes, and that the deep bleeding in her neck could have been caused by an insertion, as paramedics were unable to find veins in her arms. Rather than classifying the case as a homicide, Dr. Werner Spitz ruled Sarah's death as undetermined. The defense further explained that her skin appeared dry because it dries more quickly than hair. They also argued that when Ryan found his wife unconscious, he unplugged the drain, tried to revive her, and called emergency services. This sequence of actions explained why her body was drier than expected, as the bathtub had already drained before Ryan made the 911 call. However, it remains uncertain whether the jury's verdict might have been different had credible evidence been presented proving that Sarah's medical condition could have contributed to the drowning. The official reason given for denying a new trial was that the jury had committed errors during its investigation. Ryan was taken aback when Jennifer Cruz appeared at the prosecutor's office to testify against him. She stated that she was a friend of Ryan's and that he had been in regular contact with her through phone calls or emails. According to Jennifer's testimony, Ryan called her on October 26, 2009, at 11:09 p.m. In a distressed tone, He allegedly confessed that he had beaten Sarah in the living room on the day she died. Sarah had discovered his infidelity and had seen inappropriate photos. They had argued for an extended period, first downstairs and later in the bedroom. Ryan reportedly pushed her into the bathroom and left her there without checking what had happened. After calming down, he found Sarah floating in a bathtub filled with water. To conceal his actions, he allegedly wiped up the water on the bathroom floor using a towel and created a plan to make it look like an accident. Ryan's attorneys worked diligently to prove his innocence. They sought to dismiss Jennifer's testimony, arguing that it lacked credibility. One clear reason was that no towels were discovered anywhere in the house, including inside the dryer. Additionally, there was no evidence of infidelity in the marriage. The couple had no financial issues and never fought. Friends described Ryan as a kind and helpful man who never displayed anger. He also had no financial motive for his wife's death, since he held no life insurance policy on her. Before the third trial commenced, Jennifer was discredited and prohibited from testifying. The alleged phone call in which Ryan supposedly confessed could not be verified. In January 2011, a trial was conducted based on newly presented evidence. The defense argued that Sarah suffered from underlying medical conditions that might have caused her to lose consciousness suddenly and drown. Several medical specialists testified for the defense, asserting that a heart or neurological defect could have led to her collapse. However, the state's medical experts rejected this explanation. The trial also exposed more details about Sarah's health and lifestyle. Her co-workers testified that she frequently slept in her car before starting her shift at the dental office because she suffered from severe allergies and stomach pain. On the day of her death, Sarah complained to her dentist employer about headaches and stomach aches. That evening, Sarah spoke with a friend, mentioning her headaches and neck pain, and her friend recalled that she looked extremely exhausted. Her tendency to fall asleep quickly made some friends suspect she might have narcolepsy. Narcolepsy is a sleep disorder marked by excessive daytime drowsiness. People with this condition often struggle to stay awake and must take frequent naps to manage. However, Sarah's mother, Ruth and Stewart, refuted this claim while testifying as a prosecution witness. She stated that she had never seen her daughter experience sleep difficulties and described her as a healthy and energetic child who followed a consistent daily routine. Sarah's medical records also supported her mother's account. As a dental hygienist, Sarah underwent regular medical examinations, and her most recent checkup revealed no signs of any health issues. Additionally, other witnesses who claimed that Sarah was excessively sleepy provided testimony that was deemed unconvincing. In situations where one individual attempts to strangle another from behind, the victim typically sustains defensive injuries on the arms and legs, as well as damage to the small bones in the neck. However, Sarah's autopsy revealed no such injuries. The defense urged the jury to carefully consider all the facts of the case, emphasizing that Ryan had no motive to harm Sarah. Nevertheless, the defense was once again unsuccessful. After approximately 12 hours of deliberation, Ryan was found guilty of murder and sentenced to 15 years in prison. The jury's verdict was primarily based on the absence of water on Sarah's body and around the bathtub, and the belief that Ryan's 911 call had been staged. One juror stated that Ryan's demeanor in court was one of the key reasons they believed he was guilty. When the autopsy photographs were shown, they felt that Ryan appeared completely unmoved. Ryan did not take the stand, though after the verdict was announced, he told the court that he loved his wife and that he had never harmed her. Ryan remains incarcerated while awaiting a federal court decision that could determine his eligibility for parole. After serving 14 years in prison, his first opportunity for parole will come in July 2025. With every passing year, Ryan continues to hope that the following year will finally bring him freedom. He maintains his innocence and continues to profess his love for Sarah, firmly insisting that he never harmed her. Ryan's prospects for parole in 2025 seem limited, as the parole board generally favors inmates who express remorse. Since Ryan has consistently upheld his innocence, he is likely to face significant challenges in securing parole. Moving on to the next case. The case of Shannon Mauney. Shannon Mauney was born on April 6, 1997, to Anshamani and Vijay Mauney. When she was a young child, her parents immigrated to the United States from Fiji. The family settled in Waukesha, a small town in southeastern Wisconsin, where Shannon was raised and attended school. She was intelligent, attractive, and very outgoing. Her parents believed Waukesha was the ideal place to raise their children. After graduating from high school in 2015, Shannon enrolled at the University of Wisconsin at Milwaukee. She was passionate about helping others and aspired to become a social worker. Despite her busy academic schedule, Shannon also worked with her father at an organic food company. It was there that she met Quinton Neal, 26, who was applying for a similar position. Quinton had a strong desire to make a positive impact on people's lives. Shannon shared a similar passion, dreaming of establishing a shelter for women and children, while Quinton aimed to create a safe haven for his community. With their shared interests and outlook on life, Shannon and Quinton quickly developed a close bond. As their friendship grew into a romantic relationship, Shannon was thrilled to have met Quinton, and they soon began living together. Quinton showed genuine care for Shannon, and she worked to maintain happiness in their relationship. They began making plans for their future together. However, their lives took a sudden and tragic turn when Shannon disappeared without a trace. On April 13, 2018, Shannon failed to pick up her younger brother from school and did not show up for work. Her phone was switched off, and she had not notified anyone about her absence from work. Concerned, her parents went to the police station, unable to locate their daughter. Initially, detectives suspected that Shannon, being young, might have run away or gone out with friends. However, her parents disagreed, knowing their daughter well. She was not the type to simply turn off her phone and leave her family behind, leaving them worried and desperate to find her. Shannon's mother provided key details to investigators, prompting them to treat the case with greater urgency. Shannon was 4 months pregnant at the time of her disappearance, raising serious concerns, as pregnant women rarely vanish without danger. Additionally, some of her belongings, including money and important documents, remained in her room, which was another alarming indication. Shannon's parents informed investigators that the father of her child was 27-year-old Quinton Neal. When contacted by phone, Quinton claimed he had no knowledge of Shannon's whereabouts. According to him, Shannon had been living with her parents, and he had not seen her at all that day. Investigators called Quinton again, requesting that he come to the police station for questioning. Quinton appeared nervous, but promised to arrive immediately. In the presence of Shannon's parents, Quinton told investigators that the last time he had seen her was more than 24 hours prior, when she left his house to pick up her younger brother from school. They had exchanged only a few text messages since then and had not been in contact afterward. Investigators asked Quinton if he had any idea where Shannon might be, but he was unable to provide an answer. According to Quinton, Shannon's life revolved around school and work, and she had always kept in touch with her loved ones until that day. However, Quinton recalled that another man had shown interest in Shannon, despite knowing she was in a relationship and pregnant. This man had persistently tried to win Shannon's affection, even after she asked him to leave her alone. Investigators immediately considered this man a potential person of concern, as jealousy can often lead to dangerous or reckless behavior. The following day, police began interviewing Shannon's friends to gather additional information. They distributed details about the search for the young, pregnant woman to all police stations throughout Wisconsin. That same day, the first alarming discovery was made. Shannon's car was found in Milwaukee, approximately 20 minutes from her home. Forensic experts carefully examined the vehicle inside and out, but found no signs of a struggle, carjacking, or any other criminal activity. However, Shannon's purse and cell phone were missing from the car. 3 sets of fingerprints were identified on the vehicle, including those of Shannon and Quinton. The source of the third set remained unknown, and police needed to determine whose prints they were. That same afternoon, the man mentioned by Quinton was questioned by investigators. Although he expressed concern about Shannon's disappearance, he denied Quinton's allegations, claiming that he and Shannon were just friends and that he had never pursued a romantic relationship with her. When pressed further, he admitted that he had once confessed his love to Shannon, but she had rejected him, insisting they remain friends. Since then, he had made no attempt to win her affection. Investigators discovered that his fingerprints matched the unidentified set in Shannon's car. He explained that he frequently received rides from Shannon to university, which accounted for his prints. He also stated that he had been approximately 100 miles away from Waukesha, attending a baseball game at the time Shannon went missing. Investigators verified his alibi and ruled him out as a suspect. The case took a surprising and critical turn when Shannon's mother, Anshimani, found her daughter's Apple Watch and reviewed her recent text messages. She brought the watch to the police station and handed it over to investigators. Upon examining Shannon's texts, they made a significant discovery. Contrary to Quentin's claim that he had not seen Shannon on the day she vanished, the messages showed that they had arranged to meet that day. This proved that Quentin had lied to both investigators and Shannon's parents, immediately making him the prime suspect. While reviewing the texts on Shannon's watch, investigators also uncovered evidence of cracks in her relationship with Quentin. The messages revealed instances of Quentin's abusive behavior toward Shannon, who was pregnant at the time. This revelation shocked investigators and Shannon's family, as they realized the young woman had been unaware of her lover's true character. Quentin apologized profusely, begging Shannon not to leave him. In response, Shannon suggested that they take a break from each other. Investigators' suspicions intensified, fueled by Quentin's troubling past. He had a criminal record, having recently been released from prison after serving time for robbery, and he had multiple arrests for assault and other misdemeanors. Shannon's parents had also begun to grow wary of Quentin, noticing their daughter's persistent depression. Additionally, Quentin exhibited emotional instability regarding the unborn baby, further reinforcing investigators' doubts about his character. After Shannon informed her parents about her pregnancy, they arranged a meeting with Quentin, during which he assured them that he would take care of both Shannon and the baby, claiming that he had always wanted children. However, a few days later, according to Anshimani, Quentin sent Shannon disturbing text messages that contradicted his earlier promise, stating that he did not want the baby. He even suggested that Shannon consider having an abortion. Police attempted to track Shannon's cell phone and discovered that it had last been active in the afternoon of April 13th, near Quentin's residence. Shannon's mother noticed severe bruising on her arms and asked her about the cause. Shannon broke down in tears and revealed that Quentin had physically assaulted her, punching her while she was in her vehicle. Despite her parents' warnings to end the relationship, Shannon ultimately forgave Quentin and resumed dating him. With this alarming information, investigators became increasingly concerned that Shannon might not be alive, prompting them to obtain a search warrant and rush to Quentin's house. At first, the crime scene appeared undisturbed. The area was tidy, with no broken furniture or scattered objects. Forensic experts sprayed the first floor with luminol, a chemical that detects blood, but found no traces. However, when the test was applied to the basement, the walls and floor glowed, indicating the presence of blood. The numerous marks found at the scene strongly suggested that Shannon was likely no longer alive. Quentin Neal was arrested and taken into custody. Before questioning him, investigators reviewed the contents of Quentin's phone and discovered that he had recently searched online for ways to remove evidence of a crime using lie, suggesting that he had been planning to hide traces of his actions. During interrogation, Quentin initially denied any knowledge of Shannon's whereabouts and claimed no involvement in her disappearance. However, confronted with solid evidence, he began to alter his account. Eventually, he confessed to everything. Quentin claimed that he had acted in self-defense when he took Shannon's life, explaining that Shannon had visited his house to discuss their future and their child, but the conversation escalated into a heated argument. According to Quentin, Shannon then entered the kitchen, grabbed a knife and a gun that were kept for emergencies, and began threatening him. Quentin claimed that he felt compelled to act quickly to protect himself, which led to a physical struggle that ended with Shannon's death. He reiterated to investigators that he had acted in self-defense, but they were skeptical due to the absence of defensive wounds on his body. Despite their doubts, they continued to listen to his account. Quentin stated that, realizing the severity of his actions, he panicked in the basement where the incident occurred. In an attempt to conceal the evidence, he used a large suitcase to hide Shannon's body. Quentin then led police to a storage unit 6 miles from his home, where he had stashed the suitcase containing Shannon's body. When detectives opened the suitcase, they found Shannon's lifeless body, her wrists and ankles bound with duct tape, contradicting Quentin's claim of self-defense. Forensic examination revealed that Shannon had died from 2 gunshot wounds to the head and had additional knife wounds on her body. Shannon's parents were devastated when detectives informed them of the discovery of their daughter's body on April 18, 2018. Quentin Neal was subsequently indicted for the murders of Shannon Money and her unborn child. The evidence gathered, including their correspondence from the day of her death, was sufficient for the court to reach a guilty verdict. The dispute had begun when Shannon visited Quentin's home to discuss her pregnancy, but she never left his house alive. The trial of Quentin Neal, accused of killing Shannon, was scheduled to begin in the spring of 2019. However, just days before the trial, anonymous letters were sent to attorneys and court officials, claiming that someone else was responsible for Shannon's death. The letters were later deemed irrelevant after the author, a friend of Quentin's, was identified and found to be attempting to confuse the investigation and help Quentin. Quentin faced the death penalty but denied the charges, claiming he acted in self-defense. 15 months had passed since Shannon's death, and her family waited anxiously for justice, trying to remain hopeful. Shannon's mother, and Shamani, worked diligently to keep her daughter's memory alive and not lose hope. Shannon had been passionate about supporting women and children affected by domestic violence, and her family had planned to build a shelter in her honor. However, that dream was never realized, as Shannon herself became a victim of violence. On July 15, 2019, Quentin Neal reached a plea deal with investigators, admitting guilt in the deaths of Shannon and her unborn child. As part of the agreement, prosecutors dropped the death penalty. 2 days later, on July 17, 2019, the Milwaukee County Circuit Court sentenced the 28-year-old to 2 concurrent life sentences without parole, ensuring he would spend the remainder of his life in prison. At his sentencing, Neal remained silent, offering no explanation for his motive. Shannon's mother, and Shamani, expressed relief that justice had been served, noting that the only silver lining was that Neal would no longer be able to harm anyone else. The family plans to honor Shannon's memory by opening a shelter in her name. Moving on to the next case. The case of Leanne Tiernan. Leanne Tiernan, born on September 27, 1984, is the daughter of Michael Tiernan and Sharon Hawkhead from Bramley. Her parents divorced early, but Leanne maintains a good relationship with her father. She and her sister, Michelle, live with their mother in Leeds, while their father remains an important part of their lives. Leanne also enjoys spending time with her grandparents. She walks them to church every Sunday morning. Leanne also has such a strong love for chocolate that an uncle has given her the nickname Chocolate Chip Niece. Leanne, a cheerful teenage student at West Leeds High School, is working hard toward her GCSEs. After studying diligently for her exams, Leanne decides to spend a day out with her 15-year-old best friend, Sarah Whitehouse. Sunday, November 26, 2000, begins bright and sunny. After attending church with her grandmother, she returned home and got ready to go shopping with Sarah. Leanne wore a black and white striped sweater, black trousers, and high black boots. She also wore a blue jacket. Her hair was styled in a French twist, which her mother adored, and she set off to meet Sarah. The two took the bus to Leeds city center. After their shopping trip, they rode the bus back to Bramley. At around 4:50 p.m., they got off the bus and walked a short distance to Sarah's house before going their separate ways. Sarah saw Leanne heading toward Howley Gill. It was a deserted, unlit path in the woods, a shortcut that Leanne's mother had forbidden her to take at night. However, since it was still light out, Leanne felt safe using this public path. It was only a 20-minute walk back home. When Sarah called Leanne's house at 5:20 p.m. to talk, she was surprised to learn that Leanne had not yet arrived home. Sharon immediately called Leanne's cell phone to reach her, but there was no answer. Sharon continued calling several times, but the phone only rang a few times before going dead. Finally, at 7 p.m. that evening, Sharon contacted the local police station to report her daughter missing. That same night, the family went to the local church to get flashlights so they could search the area. In the early morning, Leanne was searched for, but there was still no response and no sign of her. West Yorkshire Police, led by Inspector Chris Gregg, launched an intensive search for her. It was a difficult undertaking, as the area contained more than 700 houses, vacant lots, woodlands, canals, drains, and wells, many potential hiding places for the teenager. Despite the obstacles, the police were determined to find a way to bring Leanne home safely. Helicopters patrolled overhead, while uniformed officers and sniffer dogs searched every corner of the streets. Litter collection was temporarily halted to ensure that no evidence would be lost. However, after a week, there was still no trace of Leanne. Investigators retraced Leanne's final steps. They were assisted by Leanne's 19-year-old sister, Michelle, and her best friend, Sarah. Michelle wore the clothes Leanne had been wearing and followed the route her sister had taken when she disappeared. "We tried our best, but we hoped that she had run away and that nothing bad had happened," Michelle later said. When the story was broadcast on television, several witnesses contacted investigators to report that they had seen a man walking a black and tan dog in the Howley Gill area just an hour before Leanne got off the bus to go home. Investigators created a general description of the man, about 5 feet 1 inch tall, with a stocky build and a round face that may have had scars. He was seen wearing a 3/4-length waterproof jacket and dirty jeans, along with a black beanie. Police quickly alerted the public and received numerous calls. All dog owners in the area became potential suspects. Ultimately, 70 dog owners were identified, but all were ruled out as suspects. The case has gone cold, with little new information emerging. However, the public continues to support Leanne Tiernan's family and does everything possible to keep her story in the spotlight. Sean Clark, a father of 3 from Leeds, heard about the case and offered a £10,000 reward for information leading to Leanne being found safe. Iceland Foods, a supermarket chain, printed Leanne's picture and details on milk cartons sold nationwide. Flyers and posters featuring Leanne in her school uniform with the words, "Have you seen me?" appeared in towns and cities. The police received some tips and were able to confirm sightings of Leanne in areas as far away as Doncaster and Blackpool, but none of this information brought them closer to finding her. Leanne's parents made desperate appeals in the media, asking the public for help. It was a very dark Christmas for Leanne's family and loved ones. Leanne's father left Christmas presents under the tree for his missing daughter, and the Est Life CD that Michelle had bought for Leanne remained unopened. Months passed while the search continued. The family sometimes felt depressed, fearing that she had been kidnapped and would never return. But Michelle said, "We couldn't believe it. Every day, when we didn't hear from her, we would ask ourselves, is she coming home today?" In the end, more than 2,000 homes, sheds, and outbuildings along the route believed to have been taken by Leanne on her way home from the shopping trip were searched. A detective explained, "We had to establish the route she might have taken. We called it the Red Route." Police also took DNA samples from more than 140 men in the area and carried out searches at various locations across Leeds. However, they found no trace of the young woman. Her family and friends remained hopeful that she would return safely. On August 20th, 2001, 9 months after Leanne went missing, police discovered a body in Woodland in North Yorkshire. This ended any hope that Leanne was alive. Police called the family to inform them of the discovery. On the day Leanne's classmates returned to school to collect their GCSE results, Mark Bisson was walking his 2 dogs in Linley Woods, a densely wooded area just inside the North Yorkshire County border. He came across what appeared to be a pile of rubbish, but it turned out to be a floral quilt. He loosened the string holding the quilt together and found what appeared to be a body wrapped in bin bags. Police arrived at the scene and completely removed the blanket and 9 thick green garbage bags, revealing a clothed body. The victim's hands were tied behind her back with 3 yellow cable ties, and a leather dog collar was tightly fastened around her neck. Investigators removed the black garbage bag from her head, revealing the decomposing face of a young woman. At the time of her discovery, authorities were unable to determine the exact cause of death, although there was a suggestion that strangulation may have been responsible. This was not the first time a body had been found at the site. In 1992, the body of Yvonne Fitt was discovered in the same area, and the killer was never caught. Detectives hoped that this case would not end in the same way. Fingerprints identified the body as that of Leanne Tiernan. An autopsy revealed that she had been strangled with a plastic cable, resulting in her death. The disappearance was classified as a murder. Authorities believed that the perpetrator was a local resident. First, Leanne's body was found 16 miles from where she was last seen. Additionally, the yellow cable used to bind her hands came from the British postal system, specifically used by Royal Mail or Parcel Force. Finally, the green bin bags in which Leanne was wrapped came from Morrison's, a large grocery chain with 2 stores in the area. DNA samples were collected from people connected to the case, including family members, friends, and known sex offenders in the area, in an attempt to find a match. On September 28th, the day after Leanne's 17th birthday, she was buried at Samford Methodist Church in Bramley, Leeds. The church where Leanne had been baptized was filled with hundreds of people paying their respects. Many spilled out onto the streets to honor her memory and share stories of her life and optimism. All attendees wore brightly colored clothing. Leanne's mother, sister, and close friends, along with others, carried a white coffin into the church. A wreath bearing the words, "Night Night Baby," and a reference to the Guns N' Roses song, "November Rain," were featured at the service. The congregation sang her favorite hymns, including "Give Me Oil in My Lamp" and "Ye Shall Go Out with Joy." Inspector Chris Gregg attended Leanne's funeral. When he saw her coffin being brought to Hilltop Cemetery, where she was laid to rest, his determination to find her killers and bring them to justice grew stronger than ever. After conducting tests on a sample of the victim's heart tissue, the medical examiner concluded that Leanne had been murdered on the day of her abduction and that her body had been refrigerated for months. Several weeks before the victim was found, the killer had attempted to dispose of the body by dumping it in a public dumpster covered with a blanket. The killer likely hoped the body would end up in a landfill, but this plan failed. Worse, the body had been hidden so well that it made collecting forensic and DNA evidence extremely difficult. Law enforcement had hoped for a quick breakthrough in identifying the killer, but that hope was dashed when tests revealed that no DNA from the perpetrator was found on Leanne. Investigators then decided to examine the items found with her. They discovered dog hair on Leanne's clothing, leading them to believe they could profile the pet's DNA and potentially identify the killer. The hairs were sent to a university in Texas, which had developed a technique for profiling pet DNA. However, the university was only able to obtain a partial DNA profile of the dog. This marked the first time a dog's DNA profile had been collected in a UK case, but there was no dog to compare it to, so the results were not used. The scarf found around Leanne's neck, which contained her hair, proved to be a vital clue. Investigators tested the hairs for DNA and created a DNA profile. They then focused on the dog collar that had been used to secure the bin liner around the victim's neck. The collar had been manufactured by Armitage Leather Products in Nottingham. If the killer had purchased the collar from this company, investigators hoped to establish the name or address of the suspect. The company reported that it had sold its products to 220 different wholesalers across the UK and provided sales receipts to the police. Investigators began contacting each wholesaler to see if they had any records of sales to the Leeds area of West Yorkshire. They obtained a significant amount of useful information from this inquiry. A Liverpool-based mail-order company, Pet Pajamas, had sold 3 leather collars and leashes from Armitage. Information about these 3 customers was passed to investigators, who began examining their backgrounds. One of these customers quickly became a suspect. His name was John Taylor, and he lived in Bramley, just about 3/4 of a mile from where Leanne went missing. This suspect had been mentioned earlier in the investigation. When Leanne's body was discovered, witnesses claimed that he had been in the woods with his dog. However, when questioned, he stated that his dog had died before Leanne was murdered. Did John kill his pet to destroy evidence? Investigators sought more information about him. When asked how often he had visited the area where Leanne had gone missing, he claimed it was not a place he had ever visited and insisted that he certainly did not go there with a dog. On the surface, John appeared to be an ordinary man. He was a 45-year-old parcel delivery driver working for Parcel Force, a division of the Royal Mail. His only previous conviction was for stealing a suit of clothes when he was 15. John was married and had 2 children, a son born in 1981 and a daughter born in 1983. The couple divorced in 1996. John lived alone in a terraced house on Cockshot Road in Bramley, Leeds. However, there were concerns that he enjoyed torturing the animals he hunted. His neighbors thought he was normal, but they had witnessed him catching and torturing rabbits, as well as stabbing a fox multiple times during his poaching trips. He also appeared to enjoy killing pheasants. After moving to his home on Cockshot Road in 1982, John began keeping and breeding dogs and ferrets. His wife at the time, Janet, had been proud of their home, but the stench from the animal feces gradually strained their marriage. She tolerated the situation until the day he brought home 2 large owls to raise in the house. The owls were fed a diet of newly hatched chicks, which he had bought in the thousands and stored in a large freezer on the property. Janet eventually decided to file for divorce. After that, John traveled across the country, but not for work. Instead, he sought out women and frequently engaged in sexual encounters. He also used Lonely Hearts advertisements. Using John's phone records, investigators began tracking down women to interview. Most people described him as harmless, but some admitted that they had contacted the police to report him as a suspect after Leanne's body was discovered and details of her murder were revealed. 2 women described him as having violent tendencies. One woman mentioned that he had asked to have sex with her daughter. An ex-girlfriend ended her relationship with John due to his interest in bondage. He would tie her hands with rope and cover her face with a scarf. When an investigator asked her to explain how John bound her, she said he used a bundle of ropes that he kept in a drawer next to her bed. Specifically, he placed a plastic rope around each of her wrists, and then used a third rope to tie both hands behind her back. This method resembled how Leanne had been found, and this information had never been made public. Police arrested and questioned John. They took a DNA sample from him and conducted searches of his home and personal property. Officers quickly cordoned off John's residence on Cockshot Road, erected a 7-foot wall, and carried out a thorough search of the property. In the backyard, they found a hedge, a plum tree, and a poplar. Pollen from these plants was consistent with that found on Leanne's hair, skin, and nasal passages, indicating that she had been there before her murder. When investigators dug up the garden, they discovered the remains of several animals, including 28 ferrets in a mass grave and the skeletons of 4 dogs. One of the dogs, brown and black, appeared to have suffered head trauma. It was possible that John had killed the dog to conceal his involvement. When police learned that a man with a dog had been seen in the area, hairs from his terrier were tested and matched those found on Leanne's body. Inside the house, the carpet had been removed. However, upon closer inspection, investigators found pink carpet fibers caught on nails in the floor. These fibers matched exactly those found on Leanne's body. They also discovered Leanne's blood on the floor. The green bin bag used to wrap Leanne's body had been manufactured in Devon. The manufacturer informed investigators that only a small quantity of this type of rope had been produced, which was typically used to make rabbit nets. The rope found at John's home matched the rope used on Leanne's body. Additionally, a large quantity of distinctive yellow zip ties, manufactured by an Italian company for the Royal Mail, were found in his home. John, as an employee of Parcel Force, a division of the Royal Mail, could have easily obtained these zip ties. Police also found a similar type of bin bag wrapped around a nail in John's kitchen. Furthermore, 3 large RG freezers were located on John's property. At first, John denied any involvement with Leanne or having any connection to her. However, when investigators presented all the evidence they had gathered, he eventually admitted that he had kidnapped Leanne but insisted that her death was an accident. According to John, after taking Leanne home, there was a struggle during which she fell, hitting her head and dying instantly. However, no evidence supported this claim, and John could not explain why Leanne had been strangled or why her hands were tied with cable ties. Investigators developed a clearer understanding of what occurred that night. Leanne was walking alone along the dark, unlit streets of Howley Gill when John attacked her from behind. Although there were no direct witnesses, someone reportedly heard a muffled scream. John covered her mouth and eyes with a scarf, wrapped her in a coat, and transported her to his home, a journey that took 22 minutes. There, he tied her hands behind her back and made her sit on a bench in the old kitchen. He strangled her with a cord and a scarf, then kept her body in the kitchen freezer for months. Before Leanne's body was discovered, his friends had reported that a freezer in his kitchen was missing. Investigators believe the freezer may have been damaged, prompting John to dispose of Leanne's body, a decision that ultimately led to his arrest. On February 15, 2002, John Taylor, aged 46, was convicted of Leanne's murder and kidnapping. He was sentenced to 2 life terms and must serve 20 years before being eligible for parole. Investigators believe this was not John's first crime. The manner in which he hid and disposed of the body was carefully planned, suggesting he had committed prior offenses. After police identified John's DNA in a database, they linked him to 2 previous attacks. The first occurred on October 18, 1988, when John, wearing a mask and wielding a knife, attacked a 32-year-old woman as she walked past Howley Gill to pick up her children from school. The second incident occurred on March 1, 1989, when John, again masked and armed with a knife, broke into the home of a 21-year-old mother. He dragged her into a bedroom, assaulted her, stripped, blindfolded, and gagged her while her 18-month-old daughter cried in the next room. John received 2 additional sentences for these crimes. In the following years, police conducted a nationwide review of unsolved cases similar to Leanne's. In 2018, John admitted to a series of sexual offenses against 5 women between 1977 and 1996, highlighting the seriousness of his misconduct. In another incident in 1977, just before Christmas, he held a pregnant woman at knife point and forced her to perform a sexual act on him. John Taylor was sentenced to life in prison for assaulting and attacking a barmaid. He is currently serving his sentence at Wakefield Prison, a maximum security facility, also known as Monster Mansion, which houses many dangerous criminals who have committed extremely serious offenses. John has been implicated in nearly 10 unsolved murders. Among these is the murder of Yvonne Fitt, a 33-year-old woman whose body was found in a shallow grave about 100 yards from where Leanne's body was dumped in 1992. Lindsay Reimer, a 13-year-old girl, went missing after leaving home to run an errand, and her body was found 5 months later in a canal less than 20 miles from John's home in Bramley. Deborah Woods was discovered at Elite train station, wrapped in bedding inside a bin bag after being stored in a cold storage room. Rebecca Hall, a prostitute, died in Bradford, along with several other victims. Questions remain about how many murders and attacks John may have committed and how long he may have evaded capture. That he managed to avoid arrest for so long is deeply concerning. Moving on to the next case. The case of Diana Maria Kier Lopez Penal. Diana Maria Kier Lopez Penal was born on August 12, 1998, in Madrid, to parents Diana Cristina Lopez Penal and Juan Carlo Kier. She has a younger sister named Valeria. Her family was wealthy, and everyone in the family was very close-knit. Their lives, however, hit a setback in 2013 when Diana's parents divorced. Nevertheless, her father continued to visit his daughter regularly during holidays. In the summer of 2016, Diana, her mother, and her younger sister spent their vacation in the small coastal town of Apab, de Carmel, a place they had visited many times before. The town, with a population of approximately 10,000, is a quiet and picturesque retreat away from the hustle and bustle of city life. On the evening of August 21st, Diana told her mother that she was going to meet her friends at Val in Klin Park to celebrate the Feast of the Virgin Carmen. The park was close to their vacation cottage, and Diana often walked there. Her mother gave her permission to go. Diana spent an enjoyable evening with her friends, unaware that it would be the last time they would see her. Around 2:30 a.m., she said goodbye to her friends and began her walk home. On the way, she ran into a friend, Paso Daryl, near her favorite pizzeria. He was the last person to see Diana that night. The following morning, August 22, 2016, became a nightmare for Diana's mother, Christina, when she realized her daughter had not returned from the party. Diana's phone was off, which heightened her concern. Without hesitation, Christina contacted the police and reported her daughter missing. According to Christina, Diana did not have any serious emotional or mental health issues, despite her parents' divorce when she was younger. Police launched an investigation into Diana's disappearance, examining the mysterious circumstances surrounding it. Diana's disappearance remains a mystery that investigators must unravel. Their first clue came from the last message she sent to a friend in Madrid via WhatsApp. In these messages, Diana mentioned a stranger who was stalking her and shouting strange phrases, which frightened her. Unfortunately, these were her final messages, after which she ceased replying to her friend's messages. During the search, authorities found a black hairband along the road that resembled the one Diana had been wearing that night. Although this was the only evidence recovered at the scene of her disappearance, it provided investigators with a clue to pursue. Diana's friends had no information about her disappearance. Additionally, there were no CCTV cameras in the area where she was last seen. The street was dimly lit and deserted, with only a few garages and an old nightclub. Some witnesses reported seeing Diana get out of a car with 3 men and then enter another vehicle, but these claims were not corroborated. The investigation into Diana's disappearance considered 2 primary theories. One possibility was that she had been kidnapped by someone she knew. The other theory was that she had been the victim of a random attack by a mentally unstable individual. Diana's mother proposed a third theory, speculating that her daughter might have been taken away by boat. New information emerged when Diana's friend and ex-boyfriend revealed that she had met a man from Morocco and purchased hashish with him. However, this detail only added to the complexity of the case. The media reported that the clothes Diana wore on the evening of her disappearance had been found, but her mother disputed this, stating that it was untrue. Several factors indicate that Diana did not leave voluntarily. Her credit cards and identification remained in the house, suggesting that her disappearance was forced. Nevertheless, the case remains unsolved and continues to be a mystery. After Diana vanished, the media reported on a conflict between Diana and her mother that had occurred just days prior. The press claimed that Diana had a nervous breakdown and required medical attention. Her sister, Valeria, was also hospitalized with similar symptoms. To avoid further conflict, the court awarded custody of Valeria to her father. The decision was made as a precaution due to the stress caused by Diana's disappearance. The father and Valeria left town, sparking rumors that the family was hiding something. Diana's friends revealed that running away from home was not unusual for her sisters, especially 16-year-old Valeria. The family dynamics were complex, and arguments between the mother and daughters were common. This information raises the question: if Diana regularly left the house without issue, why was her mother so concerned this time? On August 31st, Diana's parents failed to appear at a press conference where they were expected to provide an update on the investigation into their daughter's disappearance. According to the family's lawyer, her parents were too distraught to attend, as they were struggling to accept the possibility of never seeing Diana again. An article published in El Mundo on September 11th revealed new information about the family's situation. Contrary to the mother's claims that Diana did not have mental health issues, it was reported that Diana had previously gone missing for 3 days in April. During that time, she had turned off her phone and told her mother that she no longer wished to live with her. The mother had not contacted the police, raising concerns about her response to her daughter's behavior. Letters exchanged between Diana and her younger sister Valeria were also made public, shedding light on the emotional struggles both girls were experiencing. Valeria had been hospitalized multiple times in the previous year, including one instance in which she had to have her stomach pumped due to an overdose of prescription medication. Prosecutors have launched a new investigation into the alleged abuse of Valeria, the youngest daughter of the family, due to the lack of progress in the case of Diana's disappearance. The investigation into Diana's disappearance is ongoing and advancing rapidly. Forensic experts have analyzed several items belonging to Diana, including her toothbrush, comb, computer, diary, and prescription medication. Investigators have also questioned her acquaintances, including a young Moroccan man with whom she had a brief relationship. Unfortunately, these efforts produced no results, and police searches remained unsuccessful. Authorities conducted extensive searches in the surrounding mountains, forests, rivers, and lakes. However, it appears that Diana disappeared at around 3 a.m., and the last signal from her phone was detected in the Tarragon area, 13 miles from her family's residence. 72 days after her disappearance, Diana's case remained unresolved. Police, however, recovered a hairband and a cell phone matching the description of Diana's phone. Her father confirmed that the phone belonged to his daughter. 2 months after Diana went missing, her Facebook profile suddenly became active again. Her friends and family quickly informed the police and provided screenshots. It appeared that the Remind Password feature had been used, allowing someone to access her account without knowing her login credentials. This led to 2 possible explanations. Either Diana had forgotten her password and was attempting to regain access, or someone else was trying to break into her account. Diana's phone was a key element in the case, but it provided no useful information that could explain her disappearance. The investigation finally made progress on November 10, 2006, when the driver of the car in which Diana was last seen was identified. The driver had a history of involvement in human trafficking, but this information was kept confidential to avoid jeopardizing the investigation. Initially, he had an alibi for the night of Diana's disappearance, as his wife claimed he had been with her, which temporarily cleared him as a suspect. On December 25, 2017, a new piece of information emerged that greatly aided the investigation. A girl was attacked by a man who demanded her phone and threatened her with a weapon. She screamed, and a passing couple intervened, saving her from the assailant, who had attempted to drag her into his car. The traumatized girl quickly contacted the police, providing a description of the attacker and the license plate number of his vehicle. The following day, the police arrested 41-year-old Jose Enrique Abuengay, who had a prior criminal record. Significantly, Jose Enrique was the same individual who had been detained in 2016 on suspicion of kidnapping Diana, but was released due to an alibi provided by his wife. Police re-questioned Jose Enrique and his wife. Following the interrogation, the wife admitted that her initial alibi had been false and that, in reality, Jose Enrique had been away from their home on the night Diana disappeared and did not return until 4 a.m. Jose Enrique initially claimed that he had accidentally hit Diana with his car and, fearing discovery and imprisonment, had dumped her body. However, he later altered his account, confessing to kidnapping and murdering her. According to Jose Enrique's new testimony, he went to the beach to look for gasoline from abandoned cars, and that was where he encountered Diana. Jose Enrique's confession reveals shocking and disturbing information. He kidnapped Diana, attempted to force her into a sexual act, and ultimately strangled her. This shocking confession illuminates the case, confirming that Diana's disappearance was a heinous crime. The disappearance of Diana Maria Kier Lopez Penal has been a traumatic and protracted ordeal for her family and for those following her case. The investigation lasted 494 days and received extensive media coverage, with many unfounded and damaging rumors circulating about her parents, causing them significant distress and complicating the investigation. Despite these obstacles, investigators persisted and eventually collected sufficient evidence to identify the perpetrator. Diana's loved ones remember her as a beautiful, energetic young woman whose short life was tragically ended following an encounter with a violent man. Although Jose Enrique initially withheld information regarding Diana's whereabouts, he ultimately disclosed the location of her body, allowing her family and friends to conduct a proper burial in January 2018. Her body was discovered in the well of an abandoned warehouse. The perpetrator, Jose Enrique, was sentenced to life in prison, with the possibility of parole after serving 35 years. Moving on to the next case. The case of Isabella Rodriguez. Isabella Rodriguez was born in Colombia in 1975 and relocated to Florida with her family in the 1990s. They gained U.S. residency and eventually citizenship in 2002, when Isabella was 27 years old. She married William Hellman, but they divorced in 2015 after being together for a decade. Isabella later met Louis Bennett online, and they began a romantic relationship. In 2016, Isabella and Louis had a daughter named Amelia. 6 months afterward, they bought an apartment in Delray Beach, a city on Florida's Atlantic coast. They married the following month, in February 2017. At that time, Isabella worked as a real estate agent, and Louis owned a small solar panel company. On April 30, 2017, Isabella flew to the Caribbean island of St. Martin to meet Louis, leaving their 9-month-old daughter with relatives. They intended to spend a week on the water, returning home to Florida aboard Louis's sailing catamaran. After stopping in the British Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico, they arrived in Cuba, where they stayed for a few days. On May 14th, the catamaran departed from Varadero, Cuba, bound for Florida. Isabella called her sister 3 hours later to say she would be home the next day. Around 1 a.m., Louis sent out a distress signal to the U.S. Coast Guard, reporting that his ship had collided with an unknown object and was sinking. He also reported that his wife, Isabella, was missing. A Coast Guard helicopter crew located Louis in a life raft around 4 a.m. and took him to Key West Island, the southernmost part of Florida. The catamaran was discovered floating upside down at dawn, but had not yet sunk. During an interview with investigators, Louis explained that he and Isabella took turns keeping watch. At the time of the accident, it was Isabella's turn, and Louis was asleep in his stateroom. He awoke to the sound of the collision and rushed on deck, but could not locate Isabella. He called out her name, but she did not respond. Louis suspected that the loose mast might have knocked her overboard. Louis also stated that the last time he saw Isabella, she was wearing a life jacket. When he was rescued, a Coast Guard rescue swimmer noticed that Louis's backpack was unusually heavy. Upon inspection, officers found 225 collectible coins in the backpack, but their origin was unclear. Isabella Hellman went missing on May 15th, prompting a 4-day search and rescue operation by the Coast Guard. As no signs of her were discovered, the operation was officially concluded on May 18th. Authorities grew suspicious when Louis Bennett, Isabella's husband, requested a letter from the Coast Guard stating that his wife was presumed dead just 24 hours after the search had ended. The Coast Guard denied the request, as it was beyond their jurisdiction to issue such a certificate. 6 days later, Lewis announced on TV that he was traveling to Cuba to rent a boat and continue the search for his wife independently. However, just 3 days after making this statement, Lewis claimed to have already returned from Cuba and met with Isabella's sister, stating he had checked hospitals but found no signs of her. Lewis expressed his despair and resignation over the situation, stating he was struggling to accept that his wife might be gone. He described Isabella as his soul mate and someone he thought he would be with forever. The next day, Lewis and the police attempted to retrieve his daughter from his wife's family, but they refused to hand her over. Lewis ultimately gained custody of his daughter with the assistance of the police, despite the scandal surrounding him. During the dispute, Isabella's sister repeatedly accused Lewis of being responsible for Isabella's death. Lewis's composed behavior and actions following his wife's disappearance raised suspicions among both Isabella's family and the police. Investigations revealed that Isabella and Lewis had frequent arguments after the birth of their child. Family, friends, and neighbors all confirmed this. Isabella had confided in loved ones that Lewis wanted to move to Australia, but she opposed leaving the United States. On May 30th, Lewis gave an interview in which he denied any involvement in his wife's disappearance. He stated that they had planned a happy life together, but now he was alone and their daughter would grow up without a mother. While investigating Isabella's disappearance, the police also examined the origin of valuable coins found among Lewis's belongings. It was discovered that Lewis had previously worked as a first mate on a yacht. The captain of that yacht had a collection of 617 rare coins valued at around $100,000, which had been discovered a year earlier. While the yacht was unoccupied and docked in the Caribbean, thieves broke in and stole the coins on board. Although the perpetrators were not caught at the time, the yacht's captain later identified the coins found on Lewis Bennett as part of the stolen loot, now that the FBI was investigating their origin. This new information prompted the FBI to obtain a search warrant for Lewis's apartment. Previously, 225 coins had been discovered among his belongings when he was rescued. On June 16, 2017, the search of his apartment uncovered an additional 162 gold coins hidden in a closet. Meanwhile, Lewis had relocated to England, where his parents lived, and had taken his daughter with him. However, due to financial difficulties, he returned to the United States and settled into an apartment valued at $125,000 while also receiving insurance payments for the lost catamaran. On August 28, 2017, Lewis Bennett was arrested in Florida and charged with stealing coins. He pleaded not guilty. A few days later, a federal judge set his bail at $250,000, which Lewis was unable to pay. As a result, he remained in custody while awaiting trial. Additionally, Lewis attempted to have his wife declared dead. Lewis benefited from Isabella's disappearance by gaining control of their shared property and bank accounts. However, the judge refused to declare Isabella dead twice, as the investigation into her disappearance was ongoing. In a separate case, Lewis pleaded guilty to stealing coins and transporting them to the United States in November 2017. Lewis's parents asked the judge to be lenient during sentencing, citing the fact that his daughter had already lost her mother. In February 2018, Lewis received a sentence of 7 months in prison, followed by 3 years of probation. On the same day, Lewis was charged with second-degree murder in Isabella's death. Authorities believed he deliberately caused the catamaran they were on to crash, which was allegedly a staged event to conceal the crime. The prosecutor's case was built on the assertion that Lewis wanted to inherit Isabella's wealth to pay off his debts and take their young daughter to live in Australia. Isabella had expressed fear of her husband in text messages a few months before her death, stating that she felt he no longer respected her. She also expressed fear about returning home. In a message sent months before her disappearance, Isabella wrote, "If you no longer like or love me, let's resolve this immediately. It's sad how you treated me the entire time." An inspection of the catamaran before it sank revealed that the portholes below the waterline had been left open. The damage to the dual holes appeared to originate from within the vessel, near the waterline. The waterline is the point where the surface of the water meets the hull of a floating vessel. An expert hired by the FBI analyzed photos and videos taken by the U.S. Coast Guard of the catamaran prior to its sinking. The expert concluded that Lewis's account of the events was not credible. The analysis suggested that the vessel did not sink due to accidental damage, but rather appeared to have been intentionally scuttled. A professor of nautical architecture and ocean engineering at the UDOT's Coast Guard Academy testified in court that the Coast Guard found no evidence of a collision that could have caused the catamaran to sink. Divers inspecting the vessel were cautious due to the risk of collapse, and eventually, the catamaran sank to a depth exceeding 4,000 feet, preventing a detailed examination. 2 years after Isabella Hellman's disappearance, a judge officially declared her dead. Palm Beach County Circuit Judge Scott Suskauer issued a series of orders stating that Isabella was presumed to have died on May 14, 2017. Despite the passage of time, Isabella's body has not been recovered and she has not contacted her family. Based on the available evidence, she is presumed deceased. The statement indicated that in January 2019, UDOT's District Judge Federico Moreno suspended Lewis's February sentencing hearing in Miami and rescheduled it for May 28, stating he would not act until Isabella's family could personally visit her daughter, Amelia, who turned 3 in July. In November 2019, Lewis pleaded guilty to manslaughter, and the second-degree murder charge against him was dropped. Before the plea deal, he faced a potential life sentence for second-degree murder, but the new charges limited his maximum sentence to 8 years in prison. According to a document filed with the court, Lewis claimed he did not remember what he was doing when he discovered his wife was missing. He did not search for her on the catamaran or in the water, nor did he use flares to signal for help. Instead, Lewis packed his belongings onto a life raft and then intentionally damaged the catamaran to make it flood, allowing him to escape on the raft. Prosecutors stated that Lewis waited 45 minutes after realizing his wife was missing before calling for help. Notably, the U.S. Attorney's Office emphasized that Lewis was an experienced sailor with training in emergency procedures, having previously sailed from St. Martin to Australia. It is difficult to understand why he failed to apply his knowledge to respond appropriately to the emergency situation. The prosecutor stated that Lewis admitted to being negligent in handing over control of the catamaran to his inexperienced wife, Isabella, which resulted in her falling overboard and drowning. Despite being an experienced sailor with a Royal Yachting Association certification, Lewis failed to ensure that Isabella wore proper safety equipment. In contrast, Isabella had no formal sailing training or experience, and Lewis was aware of this. Lewis had received training in emergency procedures, including man-overboard protocols and night sailing safety, but Isabella had not. The prosecutor noted that only Lewis knows the full story of what transpired on the catamaran that night. Following Lewis's guilty plea, Isabella's family, through their lawyer, expressed their immense pain and asked Lewis to show remorse. They stated that while Lewis could never undo the harm caused by taking Isabella away, he continued to inflict additional pain by preventing them from contacting his and Isabella's daughter, Amelia. Isabella Hellman's family is grieving and missing her deeply. Although they had limited contact with Amelia through 3 FaceTime calls, they had not been able to see or hug her in a long time. They longed to be reunited with Amelia and provide her with love and care. As part of their family, they wished to be with her. They urged Lewis Bennett to do the right thing. Lewis Bennett, Isabella's husband, was sentenced to 8 years in prison on May 28, 2019, after pleading guilty to manslaughter in connection with her death. During his sentencing hearing, Bennett sincerely apologized to Isabella's family for causing them immense pain. He acknowledged that his actions had led to a devastating tragedy for which he felt genuine remorse. Lewis admitted to making poor decisions that worsened the situation. He expressed regret in federal court in Miami, where he waived his right to appeal as part of his plea agreement. Before the judge delivered the sentence, Lewis requested the opportunity for early release from prison so that he could continue caring for their daughter, Amelia. Lewis expressed a desire to raise his daughter, saying, "I want to raise her in a way that honors my late wife's wishes." However, the judge denied his request, sentencing him to 8 years in prison, followed by 3 years of supervised release. As a result, Amelia will remain with her paternal grandparents in England for the time being. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed exploring these intriguing cold cases with me. If you found the video fascinating, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to Cold Case Mystique for more deep dives into cold case investigations. Your support helps me bring you more compelling content. Leave a comment below with your thoughts or any cases you'd like me to cover next. See you in the next video. And remember, the search for truth never stops.